Well, it looks like Kristen Sinema from Arizona is going to support the Inflation Reduction Act. And let's read how the Democrats won Sinema over on the Inflation Reduction Act. $13 billion tax increase on hedge funders and executives is scrapped, and billions will be used to combat drought and help her home state, Arizona. Sinema said she agreed to move forward with the Inflation Reduction Act. Leaders set key procedural vote for Saturday. Majority Leader Schumer agreed to drop provision closing carried interest loophole. White House has been touting it as a way to cut down on tax avoidance. Schumer said the agreement preserves the major components of the Inflation Reduction Act. Instead, package would tax stock buybacks companies pursue to raise share prices. Deal includes 15% corporate minimum tax, but manufacturers are pushing for changes they say are needed to encourage investment. Text of the deal is not yet available. All 50 Democrats are needed to advance the deal in a chamber that has seen COVID cases pop up. Arizona Democrat Kristen Sinema succeeded in knocking out a $13 trillion provision despised by the hedge fund industry before she announced she had agreed to move forward on major legislation heading to its key vote Saturday. With enormous leverage in the 50-50 Senate, Sinema was able to push to jettison the provision, which the White House and Senator Joe Manchin touted as a way to force wealthy hedge funders to take ordinary income rather than booking their earnings as capital gains taxed at a lower rate. It would have provided about $13 billion in revenue for the sweeping climate and health package that Democrats have rebranded as the Inflation Reduction Act. But leaders agree to fill the hole with other revenue provisions, and the latest deal would still reduce the deficit by about $300 billion. Right. We have agreed to remove the carried interest tax provision, protect advanced manufacturing, and boost our clean energy in the Senate's budget reconciliation legislation. So basically what they're going to do is move some money around and all that and make it so that it is not budget friendly, not that it is now, and just put the taxes in a different way. Instead, the new reconciliation deal would hit corporations with a 1% excise tax when they engage in stock buybacks, a practice that raises share prices, but critics say siphons off funds that otherwise might go to investment. In 2018, large companies spent $806 billion on stock buybacks, according to Senator Sherrod Brown of Ohio and Rod Wyden of Oregon, who introduced their own stock buyback legislation last year. They included an exemption for employee pension plans. Democrats are also eyeing provisions costing about $100 billion that would provide exemptions that manufacturers are pushing for in the new 15% corporate minimum tax. They are seeking exemptions for existing tax credits for depreciation, Bloomberg reported. Without the exemption, the package could discourage investment and hurt manufacturing overall, they argue. The version of the bill Manchin and Schumer agreed to would generate $739 billion in revenue, slash the deficit by about $300 billion, with $433 billion in government spending on climate while extending Affordable Care Act subsidies. And, of course, would raise gas prices and inflation because of spending. And increase the IRS to almost twice its size, which they're expecting that they're going to get a lot more money by auditing everybody from one end of the country to the other. And you'll have a whole bunch of new agents. I think it's 80,000 new agents or something along those lines. Yeah, that should be fun. They'll know what they're doing. It won't be a mess. Schumer said in a statement, "I am pleased to report that we have reached an agreement on the Inflation Reduction Act that I believe will receive the support of the entire Senate Democratic Conference. I have had many productive discussions with members of our conference over the past 3 days, and we have addressed a number of important issues they have raised, including bowing down to whatever Sinema wanted, giving her lots of stuff for her state. It's great that typical Democrat fashion that they increase stuff and make the value less for the American people and the taxes higher to give her what she wanted with some, things with drought in her state because, climate change. He said the deal preserves the major components of the Inflation Reduction Act, including reducing prescription drug costs, fighting climate change. I know they're going to save billions from reducing the price of drugs because they're giving them the ability to negotiate drug prices. So they're going to save billions because, just getting the ability to reduce, to bargain for lower prices means that they're going to get hundreds of billions of dollars that they're going to save. Anyway, fighting climate change, closing tax loopholes exploited by big corporations and the wealthy. Loopholes that are legal, So therefore, they're not really loopholes. They're what the law allows for. But they're not going to change that kind of stuff and remove those. They're just going to throw a tax on there instead of, if they feel the loopholes are being exploited, then why not vote on that to remove those? Why just put a tax in there? Because what you're going to do is you're going to allow big companies to still exploit loopholes and get reductions through different government, programs and reduce their taxes back down, or they'll just move out of the country and go somewhere else and have their factories and manufacturing in, another country. But hey, loopholes exploited by big corporations and the wealthy, and reducing the deficit by $300 billion. Sure. But the final version of the reconciliation bill to be introduced on Saturday will reflect this work and put us one step closer to enacting this historic legislation into law. So they're already ready to vote on it on Saturday, and they don't even have, here it is, Friday afternoon, they don't even have the information, the text of it available. So less than a day, it'll probably be a huge bill. No time to read it. You just got to vote for it to see what's in it. Subject to the parliamentarians' review, I'll move forward, Sinema said, pointing to the congressional scorekeeper who will rule on whether the deal's provisions are in keeping with budget rules to go on the special reconciliation bill that is protected from filibuster. Notably, she used language that could commit her to voting to proceed to the bill, but stopped short of saying she would vote for the final package. Sinema told some of her wealthy donors at a Wednesday fundraiser that it didn't make sense to harm the private equity industry by closing the carried interest loophole, the Wall Street Journal reported. Democrats also agreed to Sinema's push for billion in drought relief programs, which would benefit her parched state. Sinema had been seeking $5 billion in drought resiliency funds, which would benefit her parched state. Yeah, you just said that. Anyway, so keeping with it, let's look at tougher IRS enforcement central to Dems' economic package. I love all the hidden fees and stuff in there, and this is basically taxes and stuff like that in a bill that's supposed to be an Inflation Reduction Act. So let's tax some companies, let's tax people, let's pass a bunch of costs on, let's make it more expensive to, do any of these things like expanding your company or buying your stock back. Let's make it hard on the companies because they won't take it out on the consumer and employees. We're in a transition period, so after all, we have to be able to tolerate, the number of jobs and stuff being created going down. We have to tolerate that because it's a transition. Transition to what? I don't know. Transition to a recession? I think we're already in that. After more than a decade of mostly losing out, the Internal Revenue Service may finally get the cash infusion it's long wanted in the economic package that Democrats are working furiously to push through Congress before their August break. Under a deal worked out by Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin, the bill would spend an extra $79.6 billion on the beleaguered agency over the next 10 years. The plan would generate an additional $203.7 billion in revenue for the federal government over that time frame, for a net gain of more than $124 billion. I saw some stats that they were trying for like $125 billion. It was going to cost them $80 billion. The math is all over the place on this, but they're basically putting all this money into it with the hopes of getting, maybe a little bit more of that than that they've put in back. I don't know why you have to add a whole bunch of agents and grow the agency by almost twice, just to collect that. I mean, if we're trying to get revenue, why are we, is the Internal Revenue Service not able to collect on taxes right now? Is this something to make it faster for us? We can pay our taxes. It'll be a lot easier. Or is this a thing where it's just going to be a lot more nitpicking and suing and all this other stuff where they're going to lock everybody up with audits? They're going to punish all these companies in every way that they can. And it sure seems like it. You're making this agency that's probably one of the most confusing and most hated of organizations in the U.S. government, and you're growing it huge instantly and infusing all this money into it with the hopes of, we're going to be collecting more taxes soon. Just get ready. As the Senate prepares to begin voting on the bill in the coming days, the IRS proposal has become a magnet for GOP attacks, testing Democrat unity as they try to deliver on key climate and healthcare priorities ahead of the fall midterm elections. So clear climate, and healthcare priorities involve the IRS. Democrats say the IRS investment is needed to ensure that corporations and wealthier Americans pay what they owe in taxes, but Republicans are warning it will lead to increased scrutiny of small business owners and others who are burdened enough. The IRS has been mostly on the losing end of congressional funding fights over the past dozen years. In April, IRS Commissioner Charles Rettig told members of the Senate Finance Committee that the agency's budget has decreased by more than 15% over the past decade when accounting for inflation, and that the number of full-time employees at 79,000 in the last fiscal year was close to 1974 levels. We should really give them a whole bunch of money. We should probably give them like $80 billion. That should do it. Enforcement staffing has been hit even harder, falling by some 30% since 2010, even though the filing population increased. And as I recall, was used as a weapon during the Obama administration, where the IRS was just targeting conservative organizations, and nothing was ever done about that. Of course, the person responsible was, charged with contempt of Congress, or lying under oath to Congress or something along those lines. Never prosecuted, never taken any further than just the announcement that happened. Here we are. We're looking at, growing our government by leaps and bounds.
And what we hear from folks that look at this is that the average family has spent over $1,500 in the past year for energy, higher than they had the year before, all as a result of the policies of Joe Biden and this administration. People know what they want. They want energy that it's affordable, available, and reliable. And we know that the country is already looking at the fact that we may face blackouts as the summer progresses. The experts have said about 2/3 of the country is going to be subject to blackouts. But that doesn't seem to stop the Democrats who want to raise taxes on American energy, as well as in energy that we import from overseas. They actually have in this bill a fee on every barrel of oil that is imported. Billions in dollars of increased taxes, which will be going to the pain at the pump. And remember.
Now think about that. If they're taxing every bit of oil when they're trying to bring down oil prices, and he's about to talk about it in a minute, Joe Biden's overseas begging Saudi Arabia to increase their oil, and he's selling off strategic oil reserve to other countries like China. And at the same time, he's going to sign this bill allowing for increase on taxes to the gas industry. Where does that lead? Where can it lead? It ultimately is going to be raising the prices on the consumer. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it.
Remember, this is Joe Biden who just a year ago at the Glasgow Climate Summit in Scotland went and asked Vladimir Putin to produce more Russian oil and send to the United States. He went to Iran for oil, Venezuela for oil, and just went hat in hand to Saudi Arabia saying, send us more. That will all be taxed at a higher rate, taxing every barrel more than ever before. Oh, and they've indexed it to inflation. So at a time when we have 9.1% inflation, Joe Biden and the Democrats want to put a tax that's growing at the rate of inflation, which is going to make inflation worse. That's what these folks are up to. So the pain at the pump is going to get worse. And it's not just on the cost of energy to drive your car. It's also the energy to heat your home, energy that powers our country, energy for electricity. So Joe Manchin has agreed to something that the folks in West Virginia and in Wyoming said, Joe Manchin, what the heck are you thinking? And it has to do with coal. And that's how we have this here. Coal associations on the Manchin-Schumer bill. This is from the West Virginia Coal Association, Joe Manchin's home state. Why support anything Chuck Schumer, Joe Biden, Nancy Pelosi, or John Kerry want for coal? That's what the people of West Virginia are asking their Senator Joe Manchin. Why? It is incomprehensible, they say, why any miner would support the Manchin-Schumer legislation. So that's the impact of folks at home.
So I hate to break it to you, but if you give all this money for EVs and all these higher-end EVs, they're not cheap. I understand Chevy's going to be coming out with some that are cheap that probably aren't going to be very large and probably aren't going to get you very far. But you have to buy a battery every 100,000 miles. That's, expected to be $20,000, I believe, for each car's battery system to be replaced. And you have to plug them in. So what we're really talking about here is you stop buying gas, but then you need to plug it in, which, is coming from your power station, which is likely burning coal and, other sources to generate the electricity. So if you heard all that, it just becomes more expensive to plug your car in to charge it. And you'll be lucky if you don't need the battery packs and everything else like that to charge your car, which are an additional expense. And what we're really talking about here is these are going to be tax breaks for the wealthy that can afford those $50,000, $60,000 cars. To say that $30,000 to $45,000 cars are the middle range or a good price range for a family car is, I don't know about you, but the cars and stuff that I drive, if I pay $30,000 for a car, it better be a decked out car with lots of amenities. Car prices right now, too, are just through the roof. They're selling new cars for more than the sticker price. You can go buy a lot of dealerships. They're out of new cars. They're out of used cars. They have nothing on the lot. And they're taking bids and everything for the next cars that come into the lot or that they can find somewhere else in the country and have shipped here. You're paying a premium on them. And just the idea that this is going to help people is just ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. It's going to raise the prices of cars. It's going to raise the prices of everything. Gasoline, charging, energy, everything's going up. It's already going up for inflation. We're going to enter a recession. You're punishing companies. Their unemployment rate's going to go up. And remember, all this unemployment stuff's been good because we've been recovering from the pandemic. All these businesses closed. They laid a lot of workers off. The workers ran out of unemployment and all this, so the numbers don't reflect, the people that were unemployed that are returning to work accurately because of the recession or because of the pandemic. And then that leads to this ability to say, oh, the economy is doing great. Look at all these jobs we're creating. What kind of jobs are they? And then you look around at the low-paying jobs and they're offering $15 an hour, so we've already bumped up where, in the Midwest where $8.50 or somewhere around there is the minimum wage. Now, $15 an hour is the new minimum wage. Well, what does that do? $15 an hour becomes the new $8.50. So all the prices start adjusting. People's incomes start adjusting. And, of course, they get a little closer to the people that are working, you're making $30,000 as a McDonald's employee, and now you're making as much as or almost as much as the new nurse that started, and she's making $35,000 a year. This becomes a perpetual cycle. This is going to cost us. Mark my words.
The Joe Manchin apparently is not paying attention to at all. So what's the money going to be used for? Well, there's the climate slush funds. There's the sorts of things that Joe Biden ought to be familiar with, because when he was vice president, there was a thing called Solyndra. Wasted government money. Many of these projects, and they're going to be loaded into this bill as well under the grand title of One Big Climate Slush Fund. And then there's all these subsidies for electric vehicles. And for rich people for electric vehicles, you can make up to $300,000 a year for a family. Full subsidy. Electric vehicles costing $80,000, $7,500 subsidy. I mean, that's what we're looking at here. At a time when the families of this country are hurting, inflation is eating into people's paychecks. People are very concerned about their future.
Highest in 41 years.
Are going up a little. They're falling further and further behind the families of America are each month as Joe Biden's been president, because costs have gone up so high. The Democrats are going to make it worse if they're able to pass this reckless tax and spending bill. Senator Thune.
And so I would just encourage everyone to think about this. You might want to be calling your senators, especially if you have Democratic senators, and tell them that you don't support this. If we don't put a stop to this, the effect is going to come down the road and it's going to be too late. We need to vote these idiots out. We need to have really strong policies that are not pointed towards climate change and enriching the wealthy and hurting businesses. Republicans a lot of time get the bad frame for, they're for big business and all this other stuff. If you look at these bills, it's really the Democrats that are showing they're not for the little people. They are not for the little people. They are for big business. They are becoming wealthy from a lot of these deals, and it's really troubling. So that's it for this one. Please like and subscribe. I'm trying to get the word out. I'm trying to grow the channel. And if you get a chance, stop by and watch some of the other videos. And then also, we sell some shirts online, glasshalfwrong.com. Thank you for stopping by.